Welcome to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Our objective is to enthuse, inspire, energize, and empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes here in BW and beyond. We do so by inviting these entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs into our makeshift studio. Sometimes we call them to the restaurant, sometimes we go to our studio, and we ask them to share their experiential knowledge, their experiences and their expertise, and we ask them as many questions as we can, aimed at empowering you also as a viewer. Hello and welcome, dear viewer and listener. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. As always, I bring you dynamic, powerful people, and do I have one such person today? I have with me an old friend of mine, Dr. Xavier Mmono. But before he comes on, can I just ask you the usual favor and ask you to strike that button, that subscribe button, and of course the notification bell as well. We need to get to you more people, and we can only do so with your help. We're going to go talk about obstetrics
and gynecology.
Yes, gynecology is easy, but obstetrics, you need to get your tongue.
I think there'll be less about obstetrics actually, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. And indeed, we're going to talk about the business side of that. And let me welcome you to the studio, Dr.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mogobe.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since we last saw each other.
I think easily 4.5 decades. Easily.
I don't think it's 4.5. I think it's probably near 4.
Near 4 decades,
yes.
Would you be care to just introduce yourself and share a little bit of your background?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Viewers and listeners, and Mr. Mogobe, thank you very much for having me on your Mogobe Nuggets, which I've followed for some time. My name, as Mr. Mogobe says, is Xavier Mmono. I am a native of Botswana, but lived for a very long time in the UK. I was actually born and raised here. I was born in a small village called Khanzi. In the Kalahari, so I do claim to be a Kalahari too, although I haven't really been back there. Yeah. But on the whole, I'm still a Botswana. I obviously have a lot of British influence, and I wouldn't say I'm a citizen, but well, near enough. You can admit that.
Dual citizenship is permitted now.
I'm not sure if it is actually quite permitted in my case, but that's another story. I'm not going to discuss that. Okay. Let me not get myself into trouble and hot water. But anyway, but more than anything else, as a proud Motswana, I'm also a very proud Morolong. And I still believe in the Tswana language in a big way, and I think we don't speak enough of it. We don't actually hear enough of it. We speak more English than we do speak Tswana. But I am a Morolong, and I quite embrace my heritage from that point of view.
Okay. Let's take your journey from the time you left Botswana. What was your training in Botswana? What was your training in the UK?
Okay. So my journey actually started in 1981 after my O-levels. I was very kindly invited by DBS to apply for sponsorship. And we were basically told what you had to do. It wasn't like I wanted to be an engineer, you want to be a lawyer. I was chosen to be a doctor. And I was offered a sponsorship to do A-levels, following which then hopefully if you get in medical school, you'll get in medical school in the UK. I still remember the day that I left Botswana was it was an early morning flight from the very old Gaborone airport that most people can't remember, where UBS. And I woke up at 6 o'clock.
That's where the UB Stadium is.
Yes. So at 6 o'clock in the morning, we woke up, and I think my little brother was about 4 or 5 at the time. He was like in tears, asking when you're going to see you again. Got a plane to Johannesburg. We were put in the Holiday Inn next to the airport, basically because there was quite a few of us, and we couldn't hang around the airport basically on our own. Flew into London the following day. So a lot of black taxis that we all thought was Rolls Royces, because we'd never seen so many black taxis before. Yeah. And we picked up a guy called Mr. Parsons.
You still remember his name?
Of course I do. Mr. Parsons was one of my greatest friends. and he's helped me a lot through life, I must say. And there's his one person that, yes, he was like Marmite, either you liked him or you didn't. He liked you or he didn't, and unfortunately we got on like a house on fire.
Oh, that's good.
So then he got us on a train to Derby, started doing A-levels in Derby. For the first time in my life, I'd left home. I was 16, 17 at the time. I had my own house, my own salary. I could buy my own TV. I could buy my own stereo. And it was fun, but we missed home a lot. To phone home, it cost about £1, or actually £1 at the time, a minute. And
a minute,
and to reverse a call back, because it's all reverse calls, you hear the operator the other side speaking to your mother saying, would you accept this call? And you hope that mom will say yes. You know that it's going to cost them a lot of money.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that went by, and did the first year. We are not allowed to come home between the first year and the second year. I still came home that year because I was just really homesick, and I just said, you know, I'm going to break the rules.
At your own expense.
Mr. Parsons.
Yeah.
At my own expense on the whole. But the thing is, your stipend was stopped if you came home.
Oh, okay.
That was the deal. I actually don't know exactly what happened to my stipend at the time, but yeah. So I came home, spent the summer here, the British summer, and then went back to my A-levels. And that was obviously the next year was the year of the exams. And you're also applying through an organization called ACA to university.
Yeah.
So I applied to mainly to Scottish universities, Edinburgh and Glasgow, on the basis that my mom had been to Edinburgh, and I thought it was a good idea. Applied to a Royal Free in London because my dad had been to London. And I had this really nice career advisor who was like Margaret Thatcher, and all of a sudden, all of my life in England in the early times, there's these great women who basically guided me, and they all looked alike.
Wow.
And she was also my chemistry teacher. And she said, oh, the Scots will never have you from England, even if you pass, because she just didn't like the Scots.
Yeah.
So she says, you have to drop one of the Scottish universities from ACA. So I dropped that, and she said, where else would you like to go? And I said, I don't know anywhere else except Manchester. So I said, put Manchester down then. So I got to Manchester, and I got an unconditional offer. Almost unconditional, to go to Manchester. Manchester was very interesting in the sense that about 40% of the people who went to Manchester University at the time to study medicine were relatives of doctors. So you had to have a medical connection, and that basically got you a pass into Manchester. So I went to Manchester, sort of passed my A-levels, amazingly, despite the fact that I wasn't really sort of like studious guy. And managed to get into Manchester.
Why do you say amazing?
Because I'm not really academic. I'm more a practical person. So, and I think A-levels were really, really academic. And I chose my A-levels knowing that the subjects that I was choosing, I'm more likely to pass. So I did chemistry, I did biology, and I did physics. And I thought maths were probably tough because A-level maths in Botswana was actually quite tough, so didn't do maths, kept away from that. But anyway, I went to Manchester Medical School, an amazing 5 years at medical school, studied, but also had a really good time, like you're supposed to do at university. And then basically 5 years were over very quickly, and you had a degree. And my parents flew over, and it was like time for your graduation.
Wow.
And then we literally, this is in July, and then within like 2 weeks you were in hospital for the first time as a doctor. And then you realize, wow, I actually don't know any medicine. And I remember it was a Saturday morning.
You're saying the practical side is very different from the theory.
It totally is. And medicine is an apprenticeship. And I think when you go along and develop this argument, we'll find out also that medicine is what you learn, and if people do that, they're not free to change because they're afraid to change. And that's the medicine that basically you learn. So I ended up basically Withenshaw Hospital, which is District General Hospital in Manchester, on the 1st of August as a new doctor. And I got my bleep from switchboard. It's the old-fashioned bleeps that basically you couldn't talk to them. There's no number. All you had was like somebody saying cardiac arrest as soon as I got it. And then someone had a heart attack on the ward.
Oh, no.
I was like running, but thinking I can't run too fast in case I'm the first person there. Because I may not know what to do when I get there.
Yeah.
But anyway, I got there and the guy said, right, your responsibility is to write the notes contemporaneously, but also do the bloods, make sure everything is done. I said, that's a nice role. I can cope with that. Right? So,
while they open the guy up?
No, they're actually sort of like doing cardiac massage and stuff.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And stuff. And then basically there was also the most senior person would just not get involved. He'll sit back. And then he will say at the end when he feels there's no hope, he'll just say, okay, right, stop. And then that was it. And then he had to make that decision that we can't do the resuscitation.
Almost like playing God.
We're not, yeah, totally. We're not going to bring him back. And then it's my first experience. And then the guys turn back and says, right, you can certify him dead now, mate. And then they left. And I'm there again. So I had new leave, new day's job, didn't know anyone else, didn't know really what the death certificate looks like and what I should write. So I got my my next senior person to basically guide me through this. And that's my first learning.
Wow.
And we was working in a medical ward, so there's always going to be people dying. So that lesson from that day, basically, I knew how to do a death certificate. In fact, even more, I learned how to do a cremation certificate, because when you cremate people, you get paid an extra bit.
Oh.
For cremation, yes.
What's the reason for that?
Because when you cremate a person, you lose any evidence that it could be. So it's actually seen as a legal document rather than a medical document. So doctors, there's two parts to it. You're going to go sort of, but anyway, there's two parts to a cremation certificate in England.
Yeah.
One of them is basically the doctor who basically issues the death certificate. The next person that does it is a doctor of at least 5 years standing. Who basically sort of says, I am confident that this person has died naturally.
Yeah.
And there is nothing else that needs to be investigated, because once the body is gone, you've got no other evidence to actually go back to. So that's why. But anyway, so the year then went from doing a house officer job in medicine to a house officer job in surgery. And then that was the end of my formal education, because that year was actually part of the 5 years that you spent at university. So it was actually part of the university thing. Then the university can send you off and said, now you are a doctor proper.
Yeah.
Then it was time to come back to Botswana. Because I've done with what my contract said I should do, which is go up, learn how to be a doctor, and then come back. And then come back.
Yeah.
So I came back here.
You did?
Well, I did. Well, I did for the summer again.
Yeah.
When I finished my job, and I went back to DBS, and DBS basically turned back and said, "Well, so what can you do?" I said, "Well, I've done my house jobs. I'm a doctor. I need, in fact, training. So, in as far as I'm concerned, I need a supervised training, like any other doctor at my stage.
Yeah.
You could not just basically self-send out to the
That
wards.
was a requirement. A requirement. Was it like an
It
attachment?
wasn't. At the time, I think it was quite a lot looser than it is today. In the sense that I don't think people in admin actually understood how doctors were made. They just thought you go to medical school and you're a doctor then.
I thought you require those 2 years attachment for you to be certified.
No, you mean the internship?
Yes,
internship is actually a year.
A year
in the UK. Yeah,
and you had completed that.
I've completed that, but you are still very raw. You still don't know anything.
Yeah, really.
Yes, because generally speaking, in those years, you come in, I see you, and then I refer you to what's called the senior house officer, and he goes to the registrar. Then the registrar can't actually make a diagnosis, actually management. Then he'll go to a consultant. So that's the way that there's this hierarchy in the UK, which we'll come back to, which is a pyramid-like hierarchy, whereby the guy at the top is a consultant, and the consultants are fewer in number than the people at the bottom. So we are the bottom fish, the prawns at the bottom of the ocean. And those prawns basically you can feed on, and then you become fatter at the top. And once you become very fat, become top of the chain, the food chain, and then the bottom chain will become GPs and whatever you want to be. Some people resign and not become doctors, so you join the industry and do whatever you want.
So let's go back to the time you came back, and then you're saying to your employer, "Here I am."
Right. So my employer then realized that we were quite raw, and I don't think it's just me. I think it's almost everybody who was around my time, and I think when we first left here, there's probably about 5 people who were designated to be doctors And from my memory, 2 of us managed to go through medical school with the other 3 people who become engineers and other things because of problems with A-levels. And they said to me, go back and actually sort the UK and actually sort of get more experience. But it was open-ended. Do you want a GP out of me? Do you want a gynecologist out of me? Do you want whatever? So I went back, and this is still in the summer, by the way. So August is
The system could not absorb you.
it could not absorb me, or any other draw doctor, and it shouldn't have done.
Oh.
I'm not. I think it would have been wrong for me to go to Arapa or to joining to work in the mine
that time.
without supervision. It would be completely wrong, and I wouldn't have felt safe, and my patients would probably have died in numbers.
God forbid.
I would have been the corona of the time. But anyway, so
You went back.
I went back and I said, well, because it's a general sort of situation in Botswana, the best thing to do is become a GP. And at that time, there was no formal GP training in the UK. So I ended up basically doing what we used to call your own SHO program, Senior House Officer program. And when you finish that, then you took
SHO?
SHO is Senior House Officer.
Yeah.
So after the House Officer, which is what I'd done, I had to become a Senior House Officer. So then I went and looked for a job, and I got an interview in York, in Yorkshire, in England, Northern England. And again, I came across another fantastic woman called Mrs. Tuck, who also was like the Queen and Margaret Thatcher, and she carried a handbag with her. She was a spinster. And again, we got on very well. She was like near retirement age, but very, very caring woman. She loved Africa a lot, and she loved Africans.
She had been here.
She had been to mainly South Northern Africa, so she was. I think she'd been to places like Nigeria, so she always had an African sort of like input, so to train an African to hopefully for them to go back. So I didn't even, my interview was so easy because it just was, at that time you could just say, oh, I like you, come and work for me. There wasn't any sort of like transparent way of employing somebody. So I got a job anyway. So she employed me, and then I did 6 months with her. After 6 months I was supposed to leave. And then she says, I think you really enjoy this, so why don't you stay for another year? And then I said, okay. So this time I was more hands-on, helping you operate. And I remember sort of like being very naive. You sort of like, the way you open your clamps and stuff, it's something that, it's like riding a bicycle. Once you do it properly. But when you start, you basically struggle to take them off. Yeah. And then, or when you cut something, you have to have the scissors right, otherwise they don't cut. Yeah. The left-handed or right-handed scissors. Yes. And then sometimes you'll cut through metal and it just looks at you and say, metal into metal doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
I'm sorry. Yeah. And then she encouraged you to be hands-on, So after a year, I said, oh, fine, I've done my year now with you. So I'm going now. And then she says, no, I have spoken to Professor Drive in Leeds, and he's got a job for you. So I said, but I don't want to be an obstetrician. During this time, which I forgot to tell you, she also got me to do my basic obs and gyne exams, which are actually a common exam to surgery, to anything else. So if you,
it's not a specialization.
It is not specialization, but it's actually sort of like basics of higher education, and that is called a Part 1 exam. And that Part 1 exam I could have used in surgery, but it was actually administered by the obstetrician college because I was an obstetrician at the time. Indeed. So I went to work for Prof. Drive. I wouldn't say under duress, but I was relieved that I had a job to go to anyway. So, by that time you start having bills and you had to pay them. So you just thank God for
it started job. A family by then.
And actually, I don't have any children.
Oh, I see.
Out of choice.
Oh, okay.
And I've never been married out of choice.
Oh, I see.
So yeah. So it's been a long time, eh?
Okay, it's been ages. I thought you were going to talk to me about Johnny and Sarah.
No, so Johnny and Susan, I probably shouldn't say this online, but I've had some great women in my life. I've had some very interesting women in my life, and a lot of them are still friends of mine. So I tend not to burn bridges when I go. Except it's probably when I came back to Botswana this time. But anyway, so my bridges are still there. And I still cross them when I have to. Not in any way. Sort of like,
I hear you.
Physical, but just basically emotionally. Those people you bounce off because you knew them very well as stage. So anyway, so we're back to Prof. Drive. I was in Leeds for a year, and then very interesting at the time, interest rates in England was about 16%, 18%. And I'd met a young Tanzanian Indian guy who was very much, his father owns a pharmaceutical company, manufacturing company in Tanzania. And this guy basically had a house, he had a car that he actually bought. And then he said to me, well, it's not that difficult. You just go and see a manager in the bank and tell him who you are and tell him what you do, and they'll give you a mortgage. So they need a guarantor. So I went to see a bank manager in Wilmslow, in Cheshire. In England.
You're looking for a car at the time?
I'm actually looking for a house, thinking of a house first.
Yeah.
So I went to see this guy, and he said, yeah, we can give you 105% mortgage. But we need
that means they'll give you 5% cash.
Yes, that's exactly.
On top of
and remember, interest rates in England have been like near 1-2% recently. But they're 7% now, and they were 16% at the time.
Which is ridiculous.
So it was ridiculous. I mean, it's probably what people are paying. I don't know what the interest rates are.
But it used to be here, in the old days here.
Yeah.
It used to be very
they're
high.
quite high. And that's just before the recession then. So I sent to my dad who was here. I said, dude, I have to get a house. It's an investment, but I need 5,000 pounds from you. And then 5,000 pounds was a lot of money, and I still owe my father the 5,000 pounds.
He never asked for it back.
But he's not yet. He's actually probably going to watch this, and my dad is 93. And he's very well and very alive and very much brainy.
Okay.
He's still got his head around him and about him rather.
Yeah.
And his more problem is arthritis, but his
I'm going to suggest to him to write it off.
Totally. We'll see to that. Anyway, so I get this guy, and he says 105%. My dad then sends me a £5,000 check, banker's draft, put in the bank, and I got another money. It's a lot of money from the house that I'm buying. So I've got furniture money. I've got any repairs that I need. So basically, I'm going to move into a house, finished and done. And I've got £5,000 in my pocket. What am I going to do with it? So it's like everybody's got a car at medical school. So I went up, actually. And I bought a Renault 5 GT Turbo, which was 59995, which is like a bloody top car at the time. And I said, oh, wow.
This is life, but
I drove it for a year, and I realized basically that it's a French car. The French friends of mine may actually disagree with this, but Renault is not the greatest make. So within a year, the turbo had gone, and it basically it's cost me money to run a brand new car.
Within a year, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's what there was the turbo on it. Basically, the car was 1.4 liters, and to boost its brake horsepower, it had 2 turbos on it. And those tables basically were very fragile. So that's one. Anyway, we transgressed a little bit.
Yeah.
We are still so I'm with Prof Drive. Spent a year with him. And by that time, I'd done my Part 1 exams. And I was almost been sucked into being an obstetrician and gynecologist. And then Prof was actually also a very young professor who was very, very helpful. And he was very encouraging for me to stay within.
But would you have required additional training for you?
Yes, I was training then. I was actually not as working, but training.
Oh, I see.
So what I'm talking about now is what I call training rather than education.
Oh, I see.
So the training in England is very different. So the training in England basically will be to prepare you for your exams, which are not actually exit exams. There are exit exams now. They weren't then.
Okay.
So you became a member of the College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists when you get your Part 2. If you're working in South Africa, that day you become a consultant. In England, you may be an SHO, a senior house officer. You may be a registrar when you get those. You may be a senior registrar if you're very dumb.
It's very different there.
So it's very different. So you're still climbing that hierarchical pyramid that you have. And if you basically don't make it somewhere, you don't make your exams, then you fall aside. And most people then become GPs. On the other hand, towards the end of my training, they introduced 2 more grades, which is the associate specialist and the specialist. There's an associate specialist and another one that they actually introduced at the time. But the whole idea was basically to get people who are almost consultant grade who did not make it to become consultants.
Oh, I see.
So the pyramid did not accommodate them at the top. That pyramid is actually quite flattened a lot now. There's a lot more consultants than there is when I was training.
Did they have to make some changes in the
They
law?
they had to not make the changes in the law, but they had to make changes in the practice of medicine and the way that people were doing. So part of it was actually sort of like fueled by the EU in the sense that in England you could become a trainee indefinitely. The EU then basically said, no, you can't do that. You really have to have a fixed training. So they introduced a grade for us, which is called the specialist registrar. And that took you through your whole training until you came to the top. Then you did an exit exam. From the exit exam, then you came and applied for a consultant job. And when I came to the other side, which we'll get to in a second, then basically there's a lot more jobs than there used to be, but there's still not enough.
Okay.
So I mean, I was probably one of the I think few lucky.
Any significant challenges that come to mind during that training period?
No, I think, to be honest with you, in terms of there was this. There is no doubt. I don't know how to put this, but there's no doubt if you looked at the whole hierarchical setup in the UK in terms of medicine, there was certainly a lot of, when you graduate from medical school, I'd say 50% of people were of color, color including Asian people. A lot of people were Asian. And
from all over the world?
From all over the world,
okay.
Including Britain especially.
Okay.
So, but as you went up the pyramid, it was becoming whiter and whiter, and then you got the top. So to be a black consultant was very, very difficult. I remember when I was training in Manchester, around Manchester area, there's probably 2 or 3 consultants who applied.
What was the stumbling block for?
The stumbling block
for people of color.
I think it's the fact that it was almost like a brotherhood. You had to get on with them. I mean, I was very lucky in the sense that I think what we do as Botswana abroad, which is, I'm going to digress again, is that we tend to keep to our own, and really to make it in medicine or probably in any other thing. It's not just about you coming to work 9 to 5. It's actually sort of forming those relationships as I work. Because when you go to interviews, I mean, I spend the whole first 4 or 5 years of my career without really being interviewed. We've been invited to come and work for us because they knew you through someone else. And that had to stop. They had to change that. And actually now you had to apply formally. You had to have formal interviews. They have a panel of them. So I wasn't just...
Because in your case, you have been referred. You're getting references.
Yes, but that's the way it is. So if someone liked you, if Miss Tuck liked you, she'll get a job. You know? And if Prof likes you, Prof has got influence. She'll get a job. So from Prof, I went up to do to work in a sperm bank actually.
Really?
Which in Sheffield. So after your second year,
that's a scary scene.
Well,
let me
explain what it was. So I just said that which is sort of like to get your ears up.
You did get them up.
So essentially, after the second year of training, when I finished Prof, the norm then was to do something what's called an elective, where you had to work outside your own field. And for some reason, I went to do this condition which is a cancer of the placenta. It's called trophoblastic disease. And the guys that we're doing were based in a place that's centralized. There's a unit in Sheffield, there's a unit in Royal Free in London. So I went to the one in Sheffield because it wasn't quite outside my profession, as in my chosen career, but it was far enough to be considered to be a specialist in that I could actually use as my elective. So another guy, basically another name to come up is a guy called Mr. Pennington or Dr. Pennington, who was running that unit.
Was he be like your mentor?
Well, I think they all are. I mean, I've come across, like I said here, across some great people who basically I still look up to this day. Some of them are no more, but you still feel like one day you can just pick a phone and say, "Hey, how are you, Mr. Fourier?" And I'll say, "Yeah, I'm still here, man." But anyway, so then I go up and I went to work with Mr. Pennington. At that time, infertility treatment was actually at the infancy. So this guy basically just thought, look, there's a lot of men who can have children.
Who cannot have
who
children.
cannot have children because they've got no sperm, or the sperm have antibodies, so they just can't get the
Or just low sperm count.
Yes. So he decided that attached to this trophoblastic disease unit, he will also
Say
have
that word again.
trophoblastic disease.
Okay.
The trophoblast is basically part of the placenta. It's a placental cancer that you get. So he decided to attach a sperm bank to it. And it was run by another doctor who basically wanted to become a consultant gynecologist, never got there, but was basis of like floating around the senior registrar thing, and she couldn't get to the consultant level. She was female, and she did that part time, and also helped him with the cancer people.
Yes.
Because of it, they got referrals from all over the north of England. It wasn't just it's a fairly rare cancer, but it's also sort of like common enough to have enough numbers for them to be fairly busy with it. So the sperm bank was actually interesting, and also it was the only one that was really in that part of England. So likewise, there was demand for it. You had to be referred. You couldn't just refer yourself, so your doctor has to refer you. And
But my traditional knowledge of sperm bank is a woman coming and saying, "I'm looking for an athletic guy who can give me children," and then is that what happened?
That's a commercial one.
Yeah.
This one was altruistic, so basically it was basically someone who basically could not even afford it. So that's another difference which you can talk about. Medicine in England is free at the point of delivery. So people will expect the government, even with IVF, that people will expect the government to provide for that, even though it's not an illness, it's not a sickness. They'll expect everything to be free at the point of delivery. We've paid our taxes, so where can we actually get treatment?
You can never turn anybody down.
You can, because
that's by implication.
It's a limited budget.
Okay.
And if somebody had 4 children through another, I'm talking about sperm banks especially, or infertility treatment in particular, because it's what we'll call a Cinderella type of thingy. What's the word I'm looking for?
Because the question was whether you can turn people back.
Yes, well, that's what I'm gonna say to you. But you if somebody didn't suit, and they already had children, say even with another person somewhere else, you say to them, "Oh, if you already had children, there's lots of people wanting the service."
Oh, okay.
That would actually benefit more from the service.
Oh, okay.
And also the thing that we had.
So you've had your share.
Yeah,
it's enough.
but then your husband may not have. But it still won't be your husband's child anyway. So in theory, but that's a long story, and you can get into the law of infertility, which is actually very interesting, and we probably here will have a lot to learn when we start really talking about infertility from what happened in the UK in the 70s. Because if for example I ask you what is a father, you're gonna say the father is the guy who fathered my child. But what if in a situation whereby somebody had infertility and they had a sperm bank and he's married? There was never any definition. The guy can be a father only at the time.
Is he going to then adopt that child?
He had to adopt until the Fertility Act of 1976, I think it's from. So at this time, that act actually sort of then defined in law and told people what a father is. So if I'm married to you and you have a child, then I am automatically the father of the child by law,
regardless of the source of the
sperm. Yeah.
But don't you have to consent?
Who?
If, for instance, you go and have an affair there, it's a different story.
It was actually meant, it's a fertility act. It's not actually about people basically having affairs.
Yeah.
So that is actually a lot more complex than so in the context of having infertility treatment.
Oh, I see.
So
okay.
If you're having infertility treatment, you don't have to adopt that child. It's automatically your child because if you consented by marriage. Basically, and also the fact that your wife has been there. But
I want to just take the conversation further and talk about your overall experience working in the National Health Service.
Okay.
Any pointers, any interesting tidbits you want to share?
Yeah. I think I'll take into a point whereby basically I had been training, and training would take about 10 years post your SHO jobs.
it's forever.
It used to be 15, 16, 20 until the EU intervened. And the intervention of the EU is a registered stage. So now the registered stage is 5 years.
Yes.
So you can spend 2 years, 7 years you can become a consultant depending on what the specialty. If you do psychiatry,
so from the start, the initial 5 years, and then the 2 years training, plus that 10 years.
No, 1 year.
1 year.
One year SHO, 1 year house officer.
Yeah.
Then normally be 10, 15 years before you become a consultant.
Yeah.
If you become a consultant, that is.
Okay. But
so
in your case, how did it go?
In my case, I was lucky enough in the sense that when I finished my job in Sheffield, then the EU had actually sort of forced the government of the UK to introduce structured training. So then I was assimilated into the specialist training scheme. So I only had 5 years to do after that.
Oh, okay.
And in that time, I also had an opportunity to do very early on to do my Royal College exams. So I wasn't under exam pressure anymore. And basics of all of it was actually mainly training.
So you've always been cerebral. You've always been a reader. Tell us about this.
I actually don't read.
No, I get the sense that you've had to read to get to these levels.
Well, you had to learn.
Yes,
because I see medicine. I mean, if I took the exams that I took when I was a junior today, I'll sail through them because I think about what I'm doing, and to the point that there is no right and there's no wrong really in medicine. You know, it's a point whereby you can stand your ground and say, I don't believe this is actually what I should be doing, even though the guys will ask you a question thinking that you'll give me a certain answer. If you can defend it, there's no reason why.
So if it's not reading, if your superpower is not reading, what is it? What is your superpower?
I think it's listening and it's thinking.
Listening and thinking.
Listening and thinking. I for my sins, which we may touch on again, is after finishing my exams at the College of Obstetricians, I then decided towards the end of my training to embark on a medical law degree.
What is that exactly? A combination of law and medicine?
No, it's medical law is done at a master's level, and it's an LLM. And the official title from Cardiff University is Legal Aspects of Medical Practice.
So a Master of Laws in Medical Law.
It's yes.
With specializing specifically in something, or
no,
it's just broad.
This is actually a general thing when you actually go there. So it will deal with autonomy, it will deal with consent, it will deal with interpreting bills, it will deal with negligence. You know, and negligence obviously is a big part of our practice.
Okay.
Which is something that really doesn't exist in Botswana, and I really sort of like have a problem with the fact that we don't get sued enough here. We really don't. And I think
lawyers are listening. Guys, you're not suing enough.
Please do. Because I think that's how we're going to learn. That's how you guys are going to live longer.
Yeah.
I mean,
we need to start suing.
And only yesterday, a friend of mine went to a hospital. I won't name the name. This on Monday for a heart procedure. A procedure. It's a minor procedure. And then 10 o'clock at night, he was dead. And then you say, you know, and
how can that be?
And I'm speaking
to. I know of many instances where people drive themselves to the hospital, and then within 24 hours.
I can tell you another incident. It was the same hospital very recently. A woman came up, had an iron infusion, and basically she had an anaphylactic shock. And she had to pick her car up after she recovered a week after. He was in the car park all the time. But, you know, and this woman is one of you. She's a lawyer. Yeah. But she's so shocked now that even if you talk to her, she says, I really want to go there again. You know, I just say, well, you have to ask them what happened for us to learn. I mean, we should be like airline pilots, and that's basically part of what I think
I'll tell you part of what lawyers are reluctant to sue. The reason is that there is a brotherhood among doctors, and they protect each other.
I think that's a problem I had when I came here.
That is a problem.
When we came here, I actually had a flurry of lawyers coming to me and say, can you look at these cases for us? And from their point of view, I knew there was a movement against me, saying, who are you coming here? And that's what we are doing. We have not accepted the fact that we are not infallible. We should be like an airline pilot. If you fly into Sesirus-Kama Airport and basically one of your tires burst because you overlaid and whatever, there's going to be an investigation. It's a minor thing that happened, and you landed the plane. You haven't damaged anything, but the investigation will say, let's not do it again. We are not able to learn from our mistakes.
They say that doctors' mistakes are often buried.
Yes, we do bury them. Like we're going to bury my friend on Sunday.
And nobody will
it
have
may not be a
evidence.
mistake. It may be genuinely he had a misadventure. But the other thing that's very interesting.
But you have to know the nature of the misadventure.
Yes.
To know where it went wrong.
But there's another part that's a problem at the moment. We're talking about mindset change in Botswana. But what we're not talking about is the fact that when I die here today, I haven't had any medical history at all. I'll be buried on Saturday. The question is, where is the coroner? Why are the police? What if someone poisoned me this morning? It's just going to know he just had a heart attack. And there's a diagnosis here.
The closest thing I've seen to what you're suggesting is where the family says, we're going to get our own specialist from South Africa to come and examine the corpse.
Right.
At our own expense. There have been one or two cases where that happened. But unless that happens, that's it.
Well, let me tell you about a case this past weekend. And I'll name it because it's public. Chilisi. Chilisi basically died on his own in Serowe. And he was found dead by a cousin or a nephew. He took him to the hospital. They said, no, take him to the mortuary. He refused and said, no, we want to know why he died. And they have to have a postmortem. And then he forced them to have a postmortem, apparently. That's what he said in his morgue slot.
At the funeral.
Yes, and then he went on, and first I'm sorry because I'm going to say this, but he went on, and in the end he says, I guess you guys also want to know what killed him. And he says, heart failure. Your heart doesn't fail for no reason. That is not a diagnosis. If you put heart failure on a medical certificate in the UK, they'll return it and say you have not actually told us why this person died. If you can't tell,
heart failure is a result, not the cause.
Totally. So everybody hearts
has to fail
when you die.
Yeah.
You get a cardiac arrest. It's the end part of your life. Everybody has a cardiac arrest. You had a cardiac arrest because you had a myocardial infarction, because you had part of your heart not getting its blood and basically dying, and then giving you heart failure and death and cardiac arrest. And in fact, by the way, most times when you actually do have a myocardial infarct, it's not that kills you. It's the fact that your heart basically goes out of rhythm. And it's that
because when you mentioned Chilisi was the chief of the Scotches.
Yeah, totally.
So we said during our time it was actually Kosiama Scotch.
Yeah, it still was.
So we would really be curious to know what happened to him, because I've never heard of him being sick.
No, I didn't actually go to the funeral, but I listened to a little bit of it. And
on Facebook.
Yes, apparently, according to one of his sisters, which was the one I had, he did have a problem in December, mainly with his. He wasn't feeling well, and he was hypertensive, and was put on treatment for that. But that itself should not really, unless it's a chronic hypertension, should not really sort of like cause you to die suddenly.
But modern medicine is advanced. You should be able to intervene.
Just like you should really not die from diabetes, you should not die from hypertension. If basically people were managing it properly, including the patient. I'm not saying the doctors. Because if the patient has no ownership of that disease, then it's very difficult for you to. You can give them tablets to take home, and if they don't take them, they're not going to kill them.
Let me take you back, getting from an HS to private practice. How was the transition? Right. And how do the two compare?
So basically, I probably have to take it back to me becoming a consultant eventually, which was, like I said to you, becoming a consultant in the UK. I was also obviously more one of them rather than an outsider, and I also believe that my race was not really part of anything, and I just didn't feel like generally my race had actually sort of like stopped me progressing to that extent. It probably was there, but it was very underhand. That I didn't see any of it really. So there's a time I probably can't remember when I was a consultant in Arrow Park in near Liverpool in the Wirral, and there's a time when the Al Qaeda people were bombing London a lot. And I think it's
I
called the
remember.
7th. It must have been the 7th of the 7th because the 7/7 bombing that day.
Yeah.
And we had a consultant meeting, and we were sitting there, and then one of the consultants turned around and said, "You know what? Let's go and see what's happening on TV." And the meeting, it's a monthly meeting, and I said, "You know, these meetings that we have every month, if you look at the agenda, it's the same everything here, and we're not really achieving anything." At that time, they didn't introduce something called pay by results, and it was occupying every consultant's brain. So what the government
Pay
was
by
saying-
results means what?
what the government was saying is there's no cost to anything. So if you go to Marina and you have your appendix out, we don't know how much it costs. If you go to Mompoloki to have your appendix out, we don't know what the cost is. So what they're saying is every hospital, if you take someone's appendix, you claim that money from the government and say you owe me 10,000 pula because I've removed someone's appendix. But then in Leeds they'll want 20,000. In another hospital, and basically then they had
It's
to
inconsistent.
well, the inconsistency is the fact that one, you may be living in London, which is a lot more expensive. You pay people more in London. You may have 2 nurses in theatre instead of 1. If you have 2, then it's quite twice the cost of a nurse.
Yes.
You may have a ward with 1 person in it, but it's heated, or you may take the patient to another ward and turn the heating off on that. So you know the cost of anything medical is not just the cost of paying the doctor. And in England, the doctor in the NHS is paid a salary, so they have no bonuses. So you can work as little or as much as you want. You won't get any more money for it.
There's no incentive to work hard.
But then on the other hand, if you had private medicine, we should ask you about private
Practice,
medicine
yeah.
first. So a lot of people will have private insurance. But if I'm an NHS consultant, I will also affiliate with some other hospitals locally that people who have insurance can actually go to. But I'll still see them as a private doctor, but still working for the NHS. And that, from our point of view in Botswana, may well be a model that you may want to consider.
Yeah.
Because we are losing a lot of people, and most of them are GPs, I must say, to private practice, but they don't have any input. When I did my,
What do you mean they don't have an input?
they don't have input into the government hospitals.
Yes. No, of course.
But when I was working in I did my elective as a student, as a medical student in Baragwanath in South Africa, and we worked all day. And then one day I was on call, and there's a new consultant came in, and there's Dr. Mbere, as in Nomsa's dad. And all of a sudden he was my consultant that night. And I said to him, "Why are you doing here?" Because I knew he was in private practice. He says, "No, I give a night every Tuesday, like once a month or twice a month, to the hospital. So he comes work to sit in the hospital and work in the hospital."
Yeah, it's a sort of a charity situation.
I didn't ask him if he got paid for it. But,
Yeah.
Even that,
Yes,
he
yes.
probably could have a lot more money
Yes.
at that time, especially in private practice. But he gave that as something. But then he was accommodated. Here, I mean, one of the things that I tried to do before to Botswana, when I was trying to do a locum, I actually wrote to the government one day and said to them, "Well, when I'm here for a week or whatever, come for 3 weeks, come for a month, and I'm happy to work in Marina." And then the response I got, "So why don't you come home then?"
Just like that.
Yeah, but the thing is, everybody's so dismissive.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that's this thing, the mindset change.
Yeah,
President.
Yeah.
You know, the thing is, these are the things that we should be thinking about. We shouldn't just think, we've got private, we've got hospitals. Why can't we somehow find a way of actually working together?
That's very true.
What's happening at the moment in Botswana is that if there's a waiting list problem in Marina, they will then get the patients over to private practice and they'll be paying private practice rates.
That makes sense.
It makes sense in a sense, but if you basically had some of those doctors coming to Marina to spend a day or two seeing government patients for a fixed fee, it'd be much better. It'd be less expensive, because then the bed and breakfast that you pay is at Sidilecha, whereas if they came to Marina, the bed and breakfast is actually at government hospital.
Speaking of that, do you ever get together and lobby? Do you have like as lawyers have, for instance, the Law Society? Do you have that setup where you're able to lobby and put ideas like that as a collective?
Well, I think there is actually, and I'm not sure how active it is. I'm not a member of that. There is actually a doctors association in Botswana. I remember sending them an email one time because we were looking for somebody to occupy premises as a doctor just to see if can we advertise with you, and we got zero reply. So I don't know how active they are as an organization, and I'm not sure how powerful.
We would have heard about them. I mean, you hear about the Law Society every day.
Totally.
So we
But
never hear about
you
the
go
medical
back,
one.
you go back to that situation of yours where you basically sort of said doctors basically are clique and they don't basically want to grass on each other. You know, it's not grassing.
It's not good for the
it's
profession.
not good for your profession. It's not good for your service to your patients. It's actually in a way a disservice to your patients that if you make a mistake, you don't own up to it. And it's okay to be sued. If I have an accident in my car, I'd expect, if it's my fault, I'll say I'm sorry, and then my insurance will say, okay, that's fine, we'll pay you. But what's the difference with me losing my arm because basically you operated on the wrong arm? You're supposed to operate on the left one, and I can't work anymore. So I'm sorry, we cut the wrong arm off, but mate, you need to live. And this is what we'll give you as an insurance company. They should be able to do that.
All right, you discovered aesthetics along the way. You became,
yes,
but you didn't quite become a plastic surgeon.
No, we are still at the 7-7 stage. And at that time, basically, I mean that the unit was not the greatest in terms of harmony. And I just said to myself, what am I actually doing here? Basically looking at televisions about a bombing in London when I'm supposed to be working. And then But wasn't it public information? Was it not? Well, it wasn't essential to the running of the hospital. It was happening in London. We're supposed to be paying by results. We are not actually performing. But it wasn't an issue. That's not the reason why I left the NHS. It was just because basically I was just getting fed up of also being working up at 4 o'clock. There's a big issue. When I was training, we were damn good as junior doctors. And we never got the consultant up. When as a consultant, I was spending half the night in the hospital because basically the junior doctor couldn't do what I used to do as a registrar. So I was being called out a lot. And then the next day I had to do a normal clinic. I'll be dressed like you, wearing a suit all of a sudden, and I spend the night basically dressed like this. So I just said, well, this is unsustainable. I said, in my 50s, in my 60s, I was looking at my colleagues who are older, saying they're still doing this. And these guys were basically sort of running from there, doing a bit of private practice there, doing a ward round there, coming to do a clinic, be on call in the evening. And that's the whole point. They were being rewarded. They were earning in the top 2% of the population. And doctors could never say we're not getting paid enough, because no one will listen to them. So what they had to argue on, and that's what they argue on now, there's actually another strike. And the first time in 50 years, consultants are striking in the UK. And they can only argue...
So the argument is what? That we're getting stressed out?
You can argue on conditions of service. That's the only
but
thing
mainly
you can do.
Because we are overexposed. We don't get enough rest. We're overworked. The system is overworking.
But they can't take the money away from you. They can't say, well, pay you half because you're doing half the work. Because basically they have to improve your conditions. And that's how essentially the consultant grade then expanded. Because basically they're forced to do that.
So how do you stay awake, doctor? How do you stay awake? If you're up all night doing this, half the night, and then you have to be...
I think it's a training that you get from when you're a house officer, because that's what you used to do when you're a house officer. We didn't have shifts then. We had on call. So you're on call, you're working all night, you go to clinic the next day, you run your patients the next day, you go home in the evening, you go out to the pub, you have a drink at 11 o'clock, you go to sleep, you wake up at 8, and then you're back again and work tomorrow morning.
It's not sustainable, surely.
Well, you're young. In my youth, actually I didn't drink alcohol then, so it wasn't. I started drinking when I was 25 for my sins. But I'm smoking cigars, and I still do. I love that stuff. But
but hopefully you're not addicted.
No, I'm not addicted to cigars. But I don't inhale cigars. I'm not a nicotine addict.
Okay. You have to show me how you can smoke without inhaling.
Cigars you don't really inhale, otherwise they'll choke you. They'll choke you. Cigarettes are different. But cigars, you can't do that. But anyway, so I decided basically that I want to try private practice. So there was two things that happened at the time. There was actually a new unit which was actually run by a South African company, based on the fact that they had been providing GP services in remote areas. They used to have these big caravans, trucks, and a horse and trailer. So the trailer will be like a complete hospital. So when they get there, it just basically sort of opens up and becomes a hospital. They join them together in a modular form. So at that time, basically, there was an opportunity to work as a consultant in one of these mobile units. But it wasn't a full-time job and gave you a lot of time to actually do something else. And I went for the job, got the job as a consultant gynecologist. There was no obstetrics involved anymore, which is a relief, because in hospital, a lot of your nighttime job was actually
But suppose someone is watching you, it was totally clueless. Define each.
So, if a woman is a woman, she wants to see a gynecologist. If she gets pregnant, she still wants to see a gynecologist, usually until when they're about 12 to 20 weeks, depending on the setup that you have. And then from that point on, when they've got a viable fetus, they will see an obstetrician. More often than not, in the training, an obstetrician and gynecologist train, they do the same, they go together. So it's very difficult.
The presence of a viable child switches the profession.
It doesn't, because normally it's the same person. So most people are obstetricians and gynecologists. You don't really get people who are just obstetricians. In very specialist units, you will get someone who doesn't do gynecology at all, but they'll do pure obstetrics. So they'll not see you've got menstrual problems or you've got tummy pains. They'll see you've got a baby because you've got a high-risk pregnancy. And they will deal with just pregnancy and nothing else. So those are obstetricians.
Yes.
So I dropped obstetrics, and a lot of my work at night time on call was actually obstetrics. So basically I could sleep a lot more peacefully. I could go out a lot more. And essentially I had a job which was pretty much a 9 to 5. And then I said, in this time, what else can I do? So I got in touch with a clinic in London called the Body Smooth Clinic.
Body Smooth.
And the Body Smooth Clinic basically offered me sessions doing mainly aesthetic or cosmetic reconstruction vaginal surgery. And with that, I had also a admission right at the Highgate Hospital in London, but I still lived in Manchester, so you could literally live.
People who need that service are those who just had babies, right?
Sometimes, if the stitching had not been very good, people may do that. People who have loads of babies and basically needed to want, for a more crude word, to be tightened, and there's several ways of doing that. When you come to laser, I may just touch on that. People who essentially, I mean, we really didn't deal with genital mutilation, because a lot of what we're doing was actually more from a cosmetic point of view and a functional point of view, and that's where aesthetic.
But you wouldn't assist someone who's maybe coming from Africa, where they've suffered from mutilation, genital.
No,
because
you
need to reconstruct,
because it has to be the route to dealing with those patients is complicated by the fact that you are really not allowed to operate on them by law.
Oh, I see.
There is actually sort of like a Genital Mutilation Act in the UK,
which prohibits.
So even if you are having a baby and you had an episiotomy, you're not supposed to repair it. But that's when you basically cut to increase the size of the aperture, so for the baby's head to come out. There were actually rules on how it should be stitched. You can't. There's lots of things that you basically have to think about, because no one has actually fallen foul with that. Into that, as far as I know, but potentially there was a legal minefield of how you deal with those sort of people. And in the cosmetic world, you don't necessarily want to get into that sort of thing, you know. So the Highgate Clinic basically offered me this great opportunity, and
it required further training.
It didn't, because it's mainly the gynecology training that I used to use as consultant. So at that time, I already got interested in things like labiaplasty, vaginoplasty, which basically like repairing different ways of repairing vaginas. I was very interested in incontinence surgery, and I saw myself when I went into obstetrics. Obstetrics was a very surgical specialist. So we're cutting people up, we're doing everything else. Then becomes laparoscopic keyhole surgery. Then less and less people were saying, no, let's treat these things medically. I mean, I'll give you an example just now. When I came in, half our list was people having things called a DNC when you clean out the womb.
Which means?
When you clean up the womb.
It's
called a DNC, dilatation and curettage. So then when I was going around, I said, no, you can't do that. You have to get a camera in and actually look inside the uterus and see what it is. It's not more difficult a procedure. But it's actually, you see, rather than actually just blindly scrape the womb. And in the end, through the college, people said to themselves, why are we actually doing this? If you look at the people that you do this operation on, it is a diagnostic operation. It's not a treatment. Here, they still think it's a treatment. Because patients say, oh,
So we're just behind.
we're behind because it makes us money. You know, it's another operation to do that
you can claim from medical aid.
Yeah, exactly. And medical aid can listen to me if they want to. If you want free advice, I'll tell them that you should not be doing decencies and probably hysteroscopies as any patients anymore. You know,
we should catch up with the rest of the world.
Well, also, I mean, if you lose a patient having a hysteroscopy or a DNC, is it really justified in modern day medicine? It isn't. But here it's fine because basically say, oh, it's fine, misadventure, it's fine. Forget about it, you know. But on the whole, if you look at that sort of thing, and that's why I say, if people don't actually complain, if people don't actually look, why
people don't sue?
Why we get not necessarily suing, just literally saying, "Can I look at my notes?"
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to go all the way and get financial compensation for it. But an apology, for some people, is just enough.
Just enough.
And a lot of people will welcome the money, but because they won't say that, they'll all say, I just want an apology. I don't want it to happen to anyone again.
Yeah.
But if we had that mindset, in that change of mindset, to say, let's find out why women still die in labor, why we still get people
in this day and age,
why people going to the hospital for a day case come out in a box. You know, that should not necessarily be happening. If it happened to me, I mean, I've had, and I'll admit to it, a death that basically has involved in it. There's only been one that I just sort of thought, look, we have made a mistake. And it's someone that came in to be sterilized.
Incorrect diagnosis.
No, it wasn't. It's someone came in to be sterilized. A young 44-year-old girl. Well, the things are called bank holidays in England, where it's basically the first month, whenever there's a holiday, it's taken to Monday. So basically you have a 3-day weekend or 4-day weekend. They don't have like Wednesday holidays.
Yes.
So we operate on this woman on a Thursday. On Friday, she's a bit sore. We saw her before you go home. By Saturday, she was quite ill, and the surgeon sits in and we perforate a bowel. And then by Monday, we're actually going sailing with an ex-girlfriend's brother. So we're towing a boat going along the M56. And then I get a call from the anesthetist. He says, just so that you're going to get a shock tomorrow when you come in, your patient died.
Oh,
I said, bloody hell, what happened? So she'd actually had, as you go in blind, doing a laparoscopy, because the first bit he put a needle, it's called a Verus needle, you put it in, and then that basically gets carbon dioxide into your tummy, and then you put the big scope in to have a look. But that little needle normally should actually just push the bowel away. So it actually has a sharp bit as you go in, but as you go in, the sharp comes in, and then you basically have a blunt instrument inside your tummy. But you can't control that because you can't see what's happening. So that's basically what happened to her. And yes, it was unfortunate.
What damage did it cause?
It perforated her bowel. So she got septicemia and peritonitis. And well, it was a harrowing thing. And because you got a coronary system in the UK, we had to go the same process. I had to go and face the relatives in a coroner's court with journalists, with everybody else, literally there.
But were you not cleared?
No, it was. A judge cannot. A coroner's court cannot. It's not.
But no negligence was found.
No. It could have been found, but that's a different thing. The coroner basically what is charged with, and that's part of the legal training as well. Is basically that they have to find only 5 things. One is who you are. The second one is basically when you died. The third one is where you died. The fourth one is how you came about your death.
Cause of death.
Okay, the cause of death, how you came about it.
Yeah.
And basically, the coroner then will issue a certificate. So when a doctor issues a certificate in the UK, they're actually issuing it saying the coroner, you don't need to have an inquest because we know what the cause of death is. Please accept it. And we go back to what we talked about before.
Oh,
about
that's
cremation.
the purpose. Okay.
So that's basically the whole process of it. And the coroner's law is a proper law.
Wow.
It's an act of parliament. It's from the 1800s, by the way. It's not been reviewed since then.
But it's still effective.
It's effective, but it has inadequacies.
No, I see.
I mean, when you work within it, it's a good inadequacies because obviously a lot of things were not necessarily there in the 1800s. That's actually sort of now pertinent now.
Yeah.
But it's not been reformed. It's not reinvested because it works. You know, on the whole.
It seems to work.
That's what we did with dead people. You know, dead people. They're gone. You don't have to do anything with it. So, so from that point of view, sorry, I've lost my track now. We're talking about.
My interest is the whole Did you find it financially lucrative, the whole aesthetics and laser practice?
Right. Sorry, can I take you back a little bit? Because otherwise we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So, I went to work in to work at the body smith clinic. And the body smith clinic at the time, there was a procedure which was called smart lipo, which has just been developed in Europe.
Smart liposuction.
Smart liposuction.
Yeah.
So instead of having a proper liposuction, you had this cannula, and then you fire laser the fat cells, and you basically destroy them, and then they get absorbed on the whole. So you basically put lots of fluid in, and they get absorbed back into your tummy.
Oh, okay.
The thing is,
and then the fat melts away.
yes, but you've broken the fat cells.
Yeah.
So fat cells have got fat. They've got oil in them. So when you actually sort of like laser them, they almost liquefy. And then basically the liquid part is the oil
that comes
out through your body, through the rest of your lymph system and things.
Yeah.
So then Smart Lipo was there, but Smart Lipo were very clever. They were the only people who could manufacture the cannulas that you used. So you could buy the machine, which is very reasonable. The cannulas are expensive, and they set a price of what you can actually charge for doing your tummy, for doing your underarms, for doing whatever. But then the results cumulatively, so if you pay 10,000 pula for here, 10,000 pula, and then some more money here, some more money there, in the end you've spent 40,000 pula. You might as well have a formal liposuction, which is actually going to remove the fat, and it's going to be in a bottle on the side when you leave.
Yeah, at a much less
totally cost. But at a danger of actually obviously having an operation, which is the downside of it. So you can't do liposuction without an operation. But Smart Lipo was actually a local anesthetic. So
you could do it fully conscious.
Yes, totally conscious. But the problem that you had is actually when you pay a lot of money, your expectations are higher. You want results. If you don't get results, you basically complain.
But you will see that bottle full
of but that's if you have a formal liposuction.
Yeah, that's true.
If you have Smart Lipo, you don't get anything in a bottle. Basically, it's like all stuff like inside.
Comes out over time.
It just comes out over time, and you had like body stocking and so
basically squeeze it out,
but then it comes back again. And what I always say to people is, when you do a body contouring procedure, whenever you do any procedure, don't forget that the fat goes there because genetically that's what you're meant to be. The reason why, and I'm going to say this, we have big bottoms in Botswana, we don't have them in England, is basically because genetically that's where we put fat.
We're predisposed.
Yes, but that is our genes.
Yeah.
So a white person will not have big ass because basically
it's influenced by diet as well.
The what?
By diet.
How you eat, to some extent. But where you lay fat, generally, it's the same thing. And we're going to go through, can go for hours.
Yeah.
The same reason why a lot of men in Botswana have got big tummies.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a very different reason for why women have big tummies. And the solution to them is not the same either. A woman's solution is a lot easier than a man. And there's another story which you can go to. You can take it to Corona and say, why did a lot of men with big tummies die during Corona?
Well, maybe you're going to tell us, doctor.
I'm not going to. It's my secret because the Ministry of Health won't listen to me. But anyway, so in short, men lay their fat on the omentum, and the omentum is limipi. So the stuff that you get out from it. So that if you had appendicitis today and I opened you up, then limipi will be around your infected appendix. Will actually wall it off. So it probably has immunological function. That function has not really been recognized. So when I was training as a young gynecologist, when you had somebody with ovarian cancer and stuff, because we realized that, well, I don't do cancer surgery anymore, but it used to be like a general thing. Now it's very specialist. Used to take out the omentum. Why do you take out the omentum? Because he realized that it'll cancer of the ovary will metastasize. It'll go to the omentum.
Yes,
because it's the immunology. It has to pass through it to do that.
You just educated me.
And quite possibly with Corona, the reason why slim young guys died, but they had a big belly, is probably without any comorbidities. And just think about it, how many of your friends actually that you know.
No, thinking about it now, they
were
previously not sick.
Actually not sick at all, but they had one thing in common. They had a big of a belly. It's probably because the omentum was actually magnifying the infection that you got from Corona. That it basically was multiplying.
One particular case, the guy ended up having what they call long COVID.
Yes.
They dragged for 18 months and then it was gone.
Right. Totally. But that's just a slightly different scenario.
Yeah, but he had a belly
yeah.
originally.
Yes, totally. And probably lost them afterwards. But it's the same thing as if you think about it, the other people who died in Corona. And we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
Are people who were basically weightlifters, the gym guys.
Yeah,
the
muscular guys.
very muscular guys.
And the reason?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's speculative. I'm speculating, and it probably has got to do with the fact that somewhere along the line, steroids were being used. And steroids basically are essential to mount the inflammatory response when you are sick. If you basically have been taking them exogenously from the outside, then you're not necessarily getting the same amount of production that you'd have get because basically everything's been suppressed.
I'm left with about 10-15 minutes with you, Doctor, so let me rush through. You had challenges in the UK, so you did have some legal challenges as well.
We did.
Are there some you want to share?
Yes, I'm quite happy to share that. And I think that's probably part of the problem with private practice, and that's why I was saying we don't get sued enough. So, and that's another story. I was in Botswana at the time. So, I'd actually sort of asked a patient she asked me if she can actually get something on credit. I don't do credit. I hate doing credit for that reason. And then we agreed that we should have it.
A procedure on credit.
And we agreed, and then she didn't pay, and then I sent her a text and said eventually send her a letter of demand to say, well, you got to pay this, and then she went to GMC and complained to say that
GMC is the
General Medical Council, to say that when she was having her procedure, her breasts were touched. And that's only when she came up with this. I mean,
just when you're asking for the money.
Just when you're asking for the money, and I was here when I actually sort of got the first note from the GMC as an email. I was in Botswana. I said, "Bloody hell!" So I got back. We tried to sort this out. Then basically, obviously, there has to be a tribunal hearing, and there was a tribunal hearing, and she was heard. I was heard.
Were they independent witnesses?
There was no witness.
Yeah, no cameras, nothing.
No, you can't have cameras in theatre.
Yeah, of course.
But the thing that actually sort of was more important thing is what you read now is the first day is what you guys as lawyers will summarize to tell the judge this is why we're here.
It's like final submissions by the plaintiff, by the suing party.
Yes, it was actually the initial submission.
Yeah.
So you get that, and then that's reported, and nothing else was really reported afterwards. The outcome of that case was never reported.
Tell me about the outcome.
Which basically the fact that no one believed that she actually was ever telling the truth, because she had like conflicting statements about everything else.
She had a ruling in her favor.
No, in my favor.
Eventually.
Yeah.
But the part that's reported is what she said to the court.
It's what the lawyer basically their opening statements.
Oh.
Is basically what formed what, if you Google now, what you see is basically based on the opening statement.
So when you Google, you must say outcome of the case. Or you should say Xavier Mmono result.
I'm not quite sure if that gives you the result, because I've never.
So how do we get to the result?
I don't know. I can send it to you if you want to read it.
Yeah.
So essentially, I'm quite happy to share it. I've shared it a lot with a lot of people here.
No, I think you do. You should, because
but at the end of the day, then there became an issue of the fact that the reason why I allowed her to have credit is because we were too friendly, and then basically I was sanctioned for that. To say you shouldn't really send friendly messages to patients. They're not sexual in any way.
Yeah.
They're just.
You're saying, when are you going to pay me?
Yeah. No, this is afterwards.
Yeah, but you didn't use words like honey or.
Yeah, no. And before emoji is on the basis of like put an X to say an X could be my initial. It could be like the fact that you're sending somebody a kiss. And
if you put 3 X's, it's a problem.
It's really.
If you put one, maybe not.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like when about the same time David Cameron was the prime minister.
Yeah.
And he sent a text to somebody else and paired LOL.
Yeah. Which means laugh out loud.
But he thought it meant that somebody actually he loved somebody. So there's a confusion about what LOL actually means. Because no one actually and this is all things that basically to you just.
But the word you had used is what? X
It's just X's, yeah, which I still use a lot. I mean, I still use X's. So if I text you, I'll probably put X on it because
I thought you'd have learned your
no,
lesson.
but part of it's my initial.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Xavier.
Yeah. Part of it's actually my initial. It's
Yeah.
actually doesn't necessarily mean anything else.
Oh, okay.
But then the outshot of that case is basically then eventually the GMC. I mean, the woman who was actually prosecuting the case is a barrister who they had a barrister. I didn't have a barrister. I was unrepresented.
Why?
Because
you couldn't afford a good lawyer?
No, because I chose to.
Why?
Because it's not actually a difficult thing to.
That's what you thought.
No, but it is.
My advice to my clients is that there's no such thing as a simple case, because it tends to use your language to metastasize into something else.
Yeah, I know.
It starts off as a simple thing,
Totally.
and then it assumes a life of its own.
Totally. No.
So you don't have a professional as a
No,
problem.
and I think this case. You're right. I think this case probably did. And in the end, basically, I just said to them, no, if the GMC basically are going to be behaving like that, I'm not going to get involved in it anymore. And then
Did it affect your ability to practice?
No, it's because and that's the beauty about doing aesthetics. A lot of my aesthetic practice was then basically mainly laser and other things, which basically doesn't require to be a doctor. It can be done by anybody else. We're doing it at a much higher level in the sense that we can do laser vaginal tightening and things like that.
But they didn't take away your practice certificate as a
no, they did because basically that's part of the sanction.
Is
but,
it?
But I haven't reapplied for it. Yeah.
Because you can always come back home.
Because I could come back home, but then home also is also an issue of who do you think you are, sort of thing. You know, and it's been a nightmare initially, sort of like trying to deal with. I mean, the only time I dealt with the Ministry of Health and with the health officials properly was when COVID was actually at its height and there was no oxygen in town, and we had oxygen, and I had to go and advise them on how to get oxygen, you know, and that's the only time basically sort of like everybody was like really friendly and saying, we can take
because they needed you.
Because the time they did, and in fact, I got a call on a Saturday afternoon.
So the suspension in the UK has not affected your ability to practice here.
It has in a way, in the sense that until basically we come to terms with mainly the minister at the moment, and I'm not quite sure whether we should discuss this.
No, maybe we shouldn't go into details.
No, there's no details actually. To be honest with you, I may want to edit some of this out, but essentially what happened is and this is the saying, "Who do you think you are?" thing, and there's a couple of things that you can put it in actually. I don't mind, but a couple of things that happened initially was the fact that I got involved when I first came here with a lot of legal stuff, basically giving. Advice
in courts.
Well, most of them I haven't gone to court yet, but they will come to court. I think the first one is in November. But I did a lot of medical reports, and I think it ruffled a lot of people's feathers. And then they basically went up and basically sort of like started talking about stuff that happened in the UK. And these are people who obviously sort of also have to give a practice certificate. And it took a long time to actually sort of say, "Yep, we're not going to do it." And then by the time they said so, you have to appeal to the minister, Gynaecology. And Gynaecology basically has been sitting on this case forever and a day. And I practice on the basis basically that I do things which are on the edge of medicine. So you could actually say you have to be very careful.
Because you're a pioneer.
You have to be very careful about what you're going to do. And the question is, does it actually make money? Which is basically the question that you asked before. There is no doubt that aesthetics makes money. The problem is
more than the regular practice.
But most people here are actually very much into medical aid. And a lot of people who make a lot of money in aesthetics is because basically somehow they find to use a code. So supposing you've got acne scars. Acne scars are not necessarily, they're cosmetic. They're not active.
By any standard.
Right. But if I treat you as acne, then I can claim for medical aid. But if I put acne, then I won't be able to. And I think that's basically, I'm not saying that's what's happening, but I think people expect to be paid, and there are a few people who basically are prepared to look at aesthetics from a different point of view and actually know that it's cosmetic, and they'll pay for that cosmetically.
All right, I want us to wrap things up a bit. What do you say are the biggest differences between practicing in the UK and practicing in Botswana?
I think the biggest practice, the thing is actually attitude. In the UK, patients expect to get good medicine, safe medicine, free at the point of delivery, and very few people have private practice. Here, you get mediocre medicine in the government services. You get fairly good practice in the private hospitals, as in like joining or upper and stuff. And then you get sort of like medically aided good practice or average practice in the private sector. But also, I think we and I think it's a general disease that Botswana have, is that we can't accept the fact that somebody will have a different point of view, a different opinion, or a different idea from what you have.
Intolerant.
It's what do you think who do you think you are to start with? And we can't be innovative. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, I said at the beginning before, I even sort of like wrote to the president, said to him, look, just go to Marina. He's been to Marina. He was crying in Marina saying, why is this a toilet in the outpatient department was like leaking, and say, but why can't it get fixed? This is the president asking live on TV. And basically says, who fixes toilets? And then call them. You know, the thing is, if we actually thought about it. Called. Yeah, somebody was called. No, somebody was on leave, I think it was. It was quite funny. But at the end of the day, small things like that, if you don't take care of them, the big things are going to be a problem too.
Is that why you said to me as you're prepping, Arichencheng?
Yes. Yes. Because
so what do you think,
I think
then,
in medicine...
How does this then tie up with the president's reset agenda?
Well, the fact that basically you could actually listen to me for a change and say to you, what's your view about medical practice? I've been trained at a very high expense, you know,
to the government and
to the government,
to your family.
To my family, actually not. My father has never paid for my school fees. No, I'm joking. He has. I think it's one pula a time when I was at Lesedi. But time. Otherwise, I was very lucky enough to basically be.
When you say Lesedi, I remember that your mom was my head teacher.
Totally.
Back then.
She was my head teacher too.
But
we basically have people who are skilled. Who, I'll give you this corona thing again. When I was asked on a Saturday afternoon, the permanent secretary wants you to come and meet us. And I went up, met them and said to them, look, we have oxygen. Why do we have oxygen? Why did I have oxygen? Me.
It's a problem.
No, there's no point. So how do you actually manage to get it?
You
know, and I said to them, because when my mom was ill, 4 years before my mom died, I came back at Christmas time, at Easter time. She was at GPH, and she was having oxygen only at night, because when she lay down, she got short of breath. So she was admitted for that reason and that reason alone. I said, why can't you give her oxygen at home? And they said, we don't normally do that. I said, but why can't you do it?
What's the reason?
You know, so we had to get it prescribed. We had to get medical aid to agree that we can get oxygen from Afrox. And then it turned out that basically a place in Block 3 had oxygen concentrators. So I said, this is actually easier because then you don't have to change the tank every day. You just plug in the wall and it gives you And then when I went back, I bought my mom an oxygen concentrator that 5 years later I still have, and it still works, and it still produces 96% pure oxygen on tap. And it's been rented through Corona loads and loads.
It's helped a lot of people.
And during that time, we actually bought more just before Corona. So we had like 5 that were circulating around town at the time. I mean,
so you saved a lot of lives.
Well, I'm not sure if I saved life, but I made
I
made a lot of people comfortable. Is what I'd like to say. Because I don't think the oxygen actually. I think the discomfort of being short of breath is basically what you need oxygen for, and then the rest of your body took over. Because basically
it can lead to a cardiac arrest.
Yes, it can if you become very hypoxic. But you take that as an example. So I met this guy as a deputy permanent secretary. There's some medical advisors. So we're talking. I had to do a spill to them, and then I said to them, you know, for 1 million pula, you can buy a 20,000 pula unit, X amount of oxygen concentrators, and then the next day, people who are just having oxygen in the hospital and nothing else could go home, and you free beds. So then you have a bed available for the person that really needs to have a bed and may need a ventilator, who's basically at home, can't go anywhere. And then the guy said to me, oh, do a proposal. This was Friday. Saturday I did a proposal, sent to them. And then by Monday, basically, it was like, no, we have ordered no, it's X amount of oxygen concentrator around in the country. I said, but why didn't you tell us at that meeting that you've got them? And that was, I don't think they've ever materialized.
It was just a way of just getting you off.
Well, partly to I think to get him off, but also what was very telling, and this is what I mean about a change of attitude. When I left that room, one of the visors came to me and said to me, "What do you want from us?" And I read that to me and,
are you looking for money?
Are you looking for money? I said, no, actually, I'm not. But if quite literally, I had been listened to at the time. What Ian was trying to do is saying, "Oh, we've got a contract and they can supply so many." They were there in South Africa. You didn't need that. And petty cash, $1 million pillar, would have made people so much more comfortable. You know, at with minimum effort. You know, and that was a problem. And I think we need to change our attitude towards our healthcare, towards how we look after our people, and also generally to say to ourselves that we can do better. And we're not doing that at the moment.
As you wrap up, what are your long-term plans? If I gave you a decade or so, in terms of your brand and what you do?
Well, my aim, I think, at the moment, and I realize this, and people have debated whether you become an entrepreneur or you basically something else at this stage. And I think I'm self-employed. I'm not an entrepreneur. But what I like to do is actually probably teach a lot of people what I know. Because it's almost like having a child, that your child can actually learn from you to become a farmer. And we're not doing that. My skills are not being used as well as they could be. You know,
is that in the form of mentorship, in the form of training,
whatever, giving lectures.
I mean,
we've spoken about
what do you have? What idea you have at the back of your mind?
I think you basically have to have a formal way of actually doing things. I mean, and one of the things that we used to do a lot at medical schools is have guest lectures. So you get somebody basically who is like a consultant in chest medicine, who just come up and talk to you. You know, and not because it's a formal thing you can be examined on, but he's sharing stuff with you. Just in fact, not necessarily to teach you.
What about teaching in one of our medical schools?
There is no reason why that is impossible. It's
one
of our medical school. You mean our medical school?
Yeah.
But then I think that there'll be a lot of things. So at the moment, I think you look after yourself. And then
I'm looking a couple of decades.
A couple of decades. I think I'll be too old to be working. And I think, I'm not one who. I still enjoy a very good balance, a life-work balance. And I try to preserve that. And I think there should be more enjoyment and less work. And that's basically when you become an entrepreneur, when I can actually have a practice and employ a junior doctor and say, well, guys, come on, run this. Then you work with them as a consultant rather than actually work as a person who's hands-on. We're not where they have to sign everything off and basically say, this is actually my practice. So,
do you have a question for me as we conclude?
No, I don't think I do, but I think it's been a sort of far-ranging interview.
It's been very, very enriching.
And I look forward to probably coming up and having some more specific and actually discuss it. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks we should know something better.
We can come back.
And I'll let you know. I think when Gynaecology gets his act together, we'll have another meeting. And I think some of my reservations about coming to talk to you is because just going online it ruffles a bit more feathers. Because people see everything as a criticism.
But you can't lose your freedom, can you?
No, but
I've thought about such things, but at what expense?
But
if you lose your freedom of speech and freedom to share, then what?
But that sharing,
life worth it?
But you're not saying anything wrong. I'm saying I'm a doctor, I make mistakes. You're a doctor, you make mistakes. But I believe that if I'm in a car and I collide into you and it's my fault, then why should you suffer?
No.
My car may not be damaged, but yours may be. And why can't you come to me and say, please fix my car? And my insurance company just say, don't do it again. Let's learn from this.
All right. As we conclude, just take a look at that camera and leave the viewers with one final message, something uplifting, perhaps.
Something uplifting. The only final thing that I would say is that I think as a nation, we're a very great nation, that we have a lot of talented people, and that we should probably accept change, as your president says, or my president too says, more than we are at the moment. I think we should be more tolerant. We should actually not be suspicious of anybody else just because they have a different point of view from us. And I think we can actually sort of like, we're a small population. I mean, there's no reason why we should be tearing each other's heads out. And on the whole, we could actually do a lot better, just like Dubai, for a country that is as rich as Dubai.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Thank you very much. Do you want to tell them where your practice is and where your socials are, how they can access you?
We are available online on marapulahealth.com, which is our website. We also have a Facebook page, which is an old one, but it's actually active, and it's called the Village Medical Chambers on Facebook. Unfortunately, we don't have an Instagram page, but on WhatsApp, we are on 73869
Okay. You've done a great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Conversation was flowing.